Chapter 8. That same day, King Xerxes gave Queen Esther the house and property of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. Mordecai was brought before the king, for Esther had revealed that he was her relative. Haman removed his signet ring, which he had taken back from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. Yet Esther appointed Mordecai to manage all of Haman's property. Then Esther fell at the king's feet and, weeping, begged him to cancel the evil plan of Haman, the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, to stop the terrible plot he had devised against the Jews. The king extended his golden scepter to Esther. She stood up and approached him. She said, "If it pleases the king, and if I have found favor with you, and if what I ask seems right to you, then issue a decree canceling the order that Haman, the son of Hammedatha and descendant of Agag, sent out to destroy all the Jews throughout your entire kingdom. For I cannot bear to see this disaster come upon my people or the destruction of my relatives." Then King Xerxes said to Queen Esther and to the Jew Mordecai, "I have already ordered Haman to be hanged for plotting against the Jews, and I have given his property to Esther. But a decree written in the king's name and sealed with the royal signet ring cannot be revoked. However, you may write another decree concerning the Jews as you think best. Write it in my name and seal it with my ring." This happened on the 23rd day of the 3rd month, the month of Sivan. Mordecai summoned the royal secretaries and dictated a decree to the Jews, the king's satraps, governors, and nobles of the 127 provinces stretching from India to Ethiopia. The decree was written in every script and language used in each province, and also in the language and script of the Jews. The letters were written in the name of King Xerxes, sealed with the royal ring, and sent by couriers riding fast horses bred in the royal stables. In the letters, the king granted the Jews in every city the right to gather together and defend themselves. If armed men from any people or province attacked them, the Jews were allowed to fight back and kill them. They could destroy their enemies completely, including women and children, and take their possessions. In every province, the Jews were authorized to do this on the appointed day of destruction, that is, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. A copy of the decree was to be issued as law and proclaimed publicly in every province, so that the Jews would be ready on that day to take revenge on their enemies. The king gave the order, and the couriers riding swift royal horses left quickly. The decree was also read publicly in Susa, the capital. Mordecai left the king's presence wearing royal garments of blue and white, with a large gold crown on his head and a purple-red cloak of fine linen. The people of Susa cheered loudly and rejoiced, and for the Jews there was light, joy, gladness, and honor. In every city and province where the king's decree arrived, the Jews rejoiced with feasts and celebrations. And many people from the other nations of the kingdom declared themselves Jews, because fear of the Jews had come upon them. Chapter 9. On the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. The day when the king's command was to be carried out, the enemies of the Jews had expected to overpower them. But the opposite happened. The Jews defeated those who hated them. In every city of the kingdom where the Jews lived, they assembled to attack anyone who sought to harm them. No one could stand against them, for everyone was afraid of them. All the provincial officials, the leaders of the various peoples, the king's administrators, and the governors helped the Jews because they feared Mordecai. His reputation had spread throughout the whole kingdom, and everyone knew that he wielded great authority in the government. Mordecai's power continued to grow more and more. So the Jews struck down all their enemies, killing them with the sword and leaving no one alive. In Susa, the capital, they killed 500 men. They also killed the 10 sons of Haman, son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews. Their names were Parshanditha, Dalphon, Aspatha, Poratha, Adalia, Aridatha, Arizai, Aridai, and Vazetha. But the Jews did not take any of their possessions. That same day, the king was informed of the number of those killed in Susa. Then he said to Esther, "In Susa alone, the Jews have killed 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman. What must they have done in the rest of the provinces? Now tell me, what is your request? Whatever you ask, I will grant it." Esther replied, "If it pleases the king, give the Jews in Susa permission to do tomorrow what they were allowed to do today, and have the bodies of Haman's 10 sons hung on poles." The king agreed and ordered the decree to be proclaimed publicly in Susa. The bodies of Haman's 10 sons were hung on poles. On the 14th day of the month of Adar, the Jews in Susa gathered again and killed another 300 men. On the 13th day of Adar, the Jews in the provinces gathered and defended themselves. They killed 75,000 of their enemies and rid themselves of all who hated them, but they did not take the possessions of the dead. On the 14th day they rested and celebrated with feasts and joy. But in Susa, the Jews celebrated on the 15th day of the month, because they had fought their enemies on the 13th and 14th, and only rested on the 15th. That is why the Jews living in villages and small towns celebrate the 14th day of Adar with feasts and joyful meals, sending portions of food to one another. Mordecai recorded all these events and sent letters to all the Jews in every province of the kingdom, near and far. In the letters he instructed them to celebrate the 14th and 15th days of Adar every year, because it was in those days that the Jews were delivered from their enemies, and in that month their sorrow and mourning were turned into joy and celebration. So they were to hold feasts, celebrate, send food to one another, and give gifts to the poor. The Jews accepted this custom as Mordecai had written, and it became their yearly tradition. Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews, had plotted to destroy them and had cast lots called Purim to determine the day they would be killed. But Esther went before the king. He ordered in writing that the evil plan Haman had devised against the Jews should fall back on Haman's own head. So Haman and his sons were hanged. That is why these days are called Purim, the plural of Pur. Because of Mordecai's letter and everything the Jews had experienced, they decided that they, their descendants, and all who might join them would observe these 2 days every year, just as Mordecai had written. It was established that from that time on, every Jewish family in every province would celebrate the Feast of Purim so that future generations would never forget what had happened. They would never fail to observe this festival. Queen Esther, daughter of Abihail, also wrote a letter together with Mordecai the Jew, confirming and supporting everything he had written about the celebration of Purim. Copies of the letter were sent to all the Jews in the 127 provinces of the kingdom, wishing them peace and prosperity and confirming that Purim should be observed on the appointed days. Just as they had set aside days for feasting and fasting, they were to follow these instructions given by Mordecai and Queen Esther. Esther's decree, confirming the rules for the celebration of Purim, was written in the official records. Chapter 10. King Xerxes required the people throughout his kingdom, both those who lived along the coast and those who lived inland, to do forced labor. All the great and marvelous things that Xerxes did, as well as the complete story of how he placed Mordecai in a high position in his government, are all written in the historical records of the kings of Media and Persia. The Jew Mordecai occupied the highest position in the kingdom, second only to King Xerxes. Mordecai was admired and respected by all the Jews. He did everything he could for the well-being of his people and for the advancement of his nation.